Welcome to Merit in Motion, a podcast brought to you by ABC Southern California. In each episode, we spotlight the people, policies, and projects shaping the merit shop construction industry, locally and nationwide. From workforce development to political advocacy, we bring you the conversations that matter. And now here's your host, ABC SoCal Government Affairs Director, Russell Johnson.
Welcome to this episode of the Merit Moment. This is a project of the Associated Builders and Contractors, Southern California chapter. And my name is Russell Johnson. I am the Government Affairs Director for the chapter. Happy to have two guests with us today for this episode of the Merit Moment. We've got Mike Brown and we've got Frank Boecker. And each one of these individuals just got back with us from our D.C. Legislative Conference back in Washington, D.C. last week. And Frank's our veteran. He's been going to these conferences for some time. And Mike is the newbie. This is the first time going to one of the conferences. So before we get into the meat and potatoes about what we experienced at the conference, let's turn it over to Mike. Let him introduce himself and the company he works for and his role in ABC. And then we're going to turn it over to Frank, have him introduce himself. And then we'll start talking about our experience in Washington, D.C. last week. So, Mike, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, thanks, Russell. My name is Mike Brown. I'm a regional sales manager with a company called eBacon. We help out with compliance, specifically with public works prevailing wage for ABC members and contractors. We're a software company. We handle kind of all things payroll, HR, and public works related. I am on the membership committee of ABC SoCal. I've been part of ABC SoCal for about 5 years. And I'm also on the political action committee. And it was really fun being in my rookie season at LegCon. And it was awesome that we had the veteran Frank that I could follow in his suit. So my goal is to get some congressional hugs like Frank, who hopefully he talks about there. But yeah, thanks, Russell, for having me.
Thanks. Frank?
I'm Frank Boecker. I am the past chairman of the board for ABC of Southern California. I've been involved with ABC for well over 30 years. And this is, I think, my sixth time coming to DC to talk to our members of Congress. So,
excellent. And tell us a little bit about the company you work for.
Oh, I'm with SunWest Electric. We are a local electrical contractor. We've been involved in ABC since the early 80s. The owner of my company that I work for has been also very involved himself personally, is serving on the board of directors, and he's made this trip to DC several times himself. So he was excited that I was able to go.
Excellent. Well, gentlemen, we had a very busy week in DC, as you both experienced. And Frank, as you know, from going multiple times, it's a busy whirlwind of a trip, a lot of activity, national board meetings. You've been, I think, 6 times, as you mentioned. How would you think this trip ranked in terms of your expectations or differences between this trip and previous trips that we've gone on?
Well, I mean, this trip I think is a lot different because obviously, going through this past elections, we've obviously, friends of ABC, a few of them did not get reelected. So we got to meet some new Democrats that I was very enlightened about their openness, about their views, and how they were open-minded about learning our views and understanding what ABC is about. And it's kind of neat to really get insight from them as far as how we could better address the newer class of Democrats. So.
And Mike, this being your first time and probably not knowing what you were getting into and going and spending 2 days on a whirlwind mission, kind of 2.5 if you count the travel day of Monday and travel day of Thursday. But what were your thoughts going in? What did it exceed your expectations, or was it totally different than what you were expecting?
Well, I'm still catching my breath because yes, it was a busy couple days, very busy couple days. I guess the one word I think that best describes the trip is just inspired. I'm inspired with the people, specifically I'm inspired with ABC and what ABC does for its members, how hard we fight for our members. I don't think many people really get to have an insight on that. When you're on Capitol Hill and you're at the Capitol building for 8 hours visiting 6 congressional offices, and you're trying to spread the merit shop message. It really was really cool to see. And, it was awesome being with someone like Frank, who's had 30 years of experience, and our board chair, Leah, and Adam Zine, a younger plumbing contractor. It was really awesome seeing everyone's just messaging and overall hope for our industry. And yeah, like Frank said, it was really cool to see on both sides of the aisle, people were at least open to the conversation. Whether, things can get implemented or passed through is another question. But it was a great experience, very busy. But I absolutely loved it. And again, I'm just inspired and kind of supercharged to fight for ABC alongside you folks.
It's interesting you mentioned that, Mike, because inspiring is what this trip does for me every year. Because when you're in the trenches day in and day out doing what I do, government affairs, it can get a little, monotonous, and you're like, oh, I'm fighting against this again. Oh, I'm fighting that. And then we're in a state like California where it's hard to get wins, right? And then you go to ABC National and you hear about some of the experiences of some of these other chapters, and just to hear that you're not alone, and you're fighting with all these people, and you're fighting on behalf of the member contractors, and the message is so unified. You come back and you're like, man, let's do this. Let's go.
Go to battle.
Yeah, let's keep up the fight for fair and open competition, right? And ensure that every contractor, every apprentice, every worker has a right and opportunity to work in the state of California. And to hear you say that is exactly what I love about this conference every year, is because for me, it's a lot, even though it's an exhausting whirlwind of a trip, you come back and your tank is full and you're ready to take on the next year. So it really is an incredibly worthwhile experience. So at least for me personally. So glad to hear that you walked away with the same impact. Now, Frank, you've been going for a number of years. This year was a little different because it was the 75th anniversary for ABC. What stood out to you about this being the 75th year that maybe made this a little different than in years past?
Well, I think that for me, what the most amazing part about that whole 75th anniversary was I got to listen to, I thought was probably the funniest comedian that I've ever heard. Right? And it just happens to be, our past president, George W. Bush. I mean, it was neat to see another side of one of our country's, most important leaders, right? The guy who, in history books, he was put into an office and had to deal with something that, it's been a long time since a president has had to make decisions based on, attacks against our country. So, it was neat to see that here, a man who had to deal with such a serious aspect of history is also just an amazing, genuine, funny human being with some amazing sides to him that was awesome. But the most important part about him too is how much he has always supported our association, and how he gets us. He understood us. He was, you've seen time after time in the messages that he, promoted about ABC and how he really supports the merit shop. So it was neat to hear him. And I wish we were able to spend more time with him, but unfortunately transportation issues caused him to be a little bit late. But it was awesome to really sit down and see a side of a president that you don't normally see. So like I said, he would be awesome on Saturday Night Live. He would be a right.
Yeah. And Mike, as a new first-time participant, you really didn't have anything to benchmark it against, but what about it being the 75th anniversary for ABC stood out to you as something that was noteworthy?
Really digging into the history of ABC, how it started in Baltimore, the original 7, I believe, what they had to go through, and just how they kind of passed. They went through some serious stuff back then. against the unions. And just to see how that torch has been passed from generation to generation was just amazing. But to Frank's point, that was an extra surreal day for me. We did a White House tour bright and early, and then we got to visit the Pentagon, which was amazing. Not many people that even work within DC get to go to the Pentagon. And we got to go to the 9/11 memorial crash site, and that was pretty heavy, extremely heavy.
Very heavy.
I was not to date anyone on this call, I was a sophomore in high school when that happened. Obviously, everyone remembers where they were, but George Bush, George W., he was my wartime president. He was the guy that kind of inspired us and let us know we were going to get through this. So to be there in the morning at the crash site and then to hear him enter the room at night was like, wow, this is crazy. It was an insane moment. Thankfully, it was heavy in the morning, but like Frank said, you put a president without cameras, especially that guy, and he was electric. I mean, he was an electric factory. He was so funny. Threw some good shots. I'm not going to go into those, but I enjoyed them. And he threw them on both sides of the aisle. He threw them all over the place. But and to hear, I also just the first pitch he threw at Yankee Stadium and kind of the background to that story. Derek Jeter walks into the bullpen and says, "Hey, Prez," and he called him Mr. Jeter. I just thought that was so cool. And I'm a Red Sox fan, so I hate the Yankees, but it was that was a magical day. So that was really cool to be a part of.
Excellent.
Russell, I was going to add, one of the things too that I'm very fortunate. I was at the 50th anniversary, and I actually got to meet and listen to one of the founding fathers of ABC. And just like Mike says, the trials and tribulations that he had to go through to start ABC. So it's kind of neat, the fact that, moving forward, here I am now at the 75th anniversary and still hearing those stories. And just, especially with Mike being new to it, hearing these stories for the first time and understanding what our founding fathers of ABC had to go through to earn the rights that we have today and the freedoms we have today as a merit shop contractor that, 75 years ago, we did not have.
Yep.
And, I just remember the stories. I can't remember the gentleman's name that was at the 50th anniversary, talking about how he was shot at in his office, right? Something that our contractors today don't have to worry about.
No.
Thank God.
You talk about the vandalism and the attacks and the burning of projects and that kind of stuff. 75 years ago, that contractors today, well, because of ABC and the people, the founding fathers of ABC and the leadership that we've had over the past 75 years, we don't have to worry about those kind of things anymore.
No, you're absolutely right. And I think when you look at the history and even while we were kind of waiting for the former president, George W. Bush, to come and attend the event because he had that travel snafu, to hear some of the former presidents that got up and talked about, their role and their time on the national board and some of the funny stories they were sharing, it reminds you that democracy is something that has to be fought for every single day. It's something that you have to work for. And when you organize into an organization, an association like ABC, it makes it easier to fight. It makes it easier to get your voice heard. And when you've got that unity around specific core values like ABC and the merit shop philosophy, it really just, that sticks for 75 years because it provides value and because it's worth fighting for, right? And Mike, I'll talk about the highlight, I think, for all of us had to be George W. Bush. It just was an incredible electric evening. But you're right, that day for me was surreal as well, because being at the Pentagon, be able to go to that 9/11 memorial, see it at the Pentagon. And then for me, when you look out that window at that Pentagon memorial, and then you can see the path that the flight took, and the way that they described it and they memorialized it and kind of recognized it in the memorial they built was pretty incredible. And then just to be there with President Bush, and he touched briefly on that day and things he had to do, and it was, it was really incredible and impactful. So, well,
One thing too is when we're at the Pentagon, it was to see the actual how they painted a different color so you can see the wingspan of the airplane that hit it.
yeah,
It brings it so surreal of how big that airplane was and the amount of damage it did in the Pentagon.
and when I walked out of that memorial room, I just couldn't say anything. I was just kind of like, whoa.
Especially when it was neat. The tour guide, when he talks about remembering it, how they have to remember a name and how important it is to remember those names and to talk them all the time. I mean, to me, that was a huge impact because you look at some of the names of some of the service members that were lost, during that attack. It's just, I just can't imagine what it was like for the families of those service members. Here they are on the, continental United States, at home in DC, to be attacked and killed in an attack like that. It just, imagine that it's just the families were just, I just can't imagine what they go through. And I'm hoping that they actually get this, and I'm sure they have seen the memorial and actually see their family member memorialized forever, right, on that wall. It's pretty impressive. So.
Yeah, Frank, just to touch on that part was, that's when it hit me like a ton of bricks, because he told two names. He told the youngest person and then the oldest person that was impacted by that, of the 184 that died at the Pentagon attack. And the youngest was a 3-year-old girl, and I have a 3-year-old daughter. So
yeah, that's definitely hurts you right there.
Yeah, crushed me. And then talking about the captain who was 71 years old, who shielded himself and saved 5 people. I don't know how exactly it was on a plane, or I forget the detail, but he gave his life to save 5 children. And yeah, I mean, I could say for Russell, I was speechless. I mean, that was an emotional morning.
So while that was impactful, let's talk a little bit about the impact that we had while we were walking the halls of Congress. And we were going and we were visiting with the members of the House, and we were having conversations about ABC and our core issues. And we talked about a lot of different issues. We talked about the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act, recertification, and we talked about ensuring that we've got more opportunities for apprentices because of that funding and through the WIOA program. But then also we had, and really the core focus of our discussion was around the Fair and Open Competition Act. And there was a key opportunity for us with the Fair and Open Competition Act this year because of what happened with the Biden executive order, and then how some of the agencies over the last few months have actually been able to exempt themselves from it. And the Biden executive order, just as a recap, mandates PLAs on federal projects over $35 million. It's the first time it's ever been a mandate. It usually would be encouraged, or when we had Bush, we had an executive order that discouraged them but didn't ban them. And then when Obama came in, he did an executive order that encouraged them. And then when Trump came in, he really didn't do anything. And then we had Biden, and his executive order mandated project labor agreements on federal projects of $35 million or more. Many of the agencies started exempting themselves because it just wasn't feasible. They couldn't deliver the project. They couldn't get enough bidders. They couldn't, do it on budget with the PLA requirement, right? So fast forward, the building trade sued to enforce the executive order. They won, and the Trump administration has issued guidance. Hey, now we got to implement this $35 million PLA mandate. And for us, talking about the Fair and Open Competition Act and eliminating discriminatory project labor agreements was really critical going around talking to the members of Congress. Mike, let's start with you. Tell me about what you thought about just sharing that message and about how PLAs discriminate, how that exchange was like with the members of Congress.
All right. So full disclosure. So going in, um, when I think of congressmen and women, I assume on the campaign trail, they might be lying to me a little bit to get into office. And I assume when they're talking to me through the television, they're still probably lying to me. So I kind of wanted to sit in the room with them and just feel it in person. Are you telling the truth, or are you open to talk about these issues? And again, inspired. I was inspired. The majority of them were both sides of the aisle. Obviously, we had Congressman Kim and Ken
Calvert.
Calvert. They're fighting our fight for us. But even on the other side, well, this actually brings another point. Term limits. I think term limits might be good because the freshman congressman Democrat that we met was open to it, asking really good questions. Once he started kind of hearing how PLAs work, he realized, oh, that doesn't really make sense. What's the workaround here? Can we change the language? Because I don't know if I can get the votes. But then when you went to the tenured Democrat congressman, you could tell it was kind of a throwaway issue. I don't know how much movement you're going to get with that guy or what he's actually going to do for us. Probably nothing. So again, term limits, it's kind of like, okay, they have fresh eyes, or they're willing to hear things in the beginning, and then they kind of just do what their constituents or what their lobbyists pay them to do once they're sitting in Capitol Hill for a while. But so I guess to circle back, it was great. And it was in Russell, you brought up a great point to a lot of these folks that, even in California, where these guys are voted from, Governor Newsom, he fought back against a $35 million PLA mandate because he realized they weren't financially feasible and we're not in a good financial state in the state. So I think giving them that message, like, hey, even California saying we can't do this, I think was helpful. And it'll just be interesting to see. I mean, I don't know, Russell. I mean, what is the follow up with the guy like that? George, what was his last name? Whiteside. So George Whiteside, like, I was extremely optimistic with our conversation with him. Is there follow up now with ABC in his office to dig deeper with this and see if he can get some movement on his side of the ball?
Yeah, 100%. And that's exactly what we're going to be doing. We're going to be working with his office. We're going to go get him on a tour, introduce him to some apprentices, spread the message about how when you've got fair and open competition in federal contracting, there's opportunity for everyone. And there's enough work out there that everyone participates. Everyone will get a shot. But without that Fair and Open Competition Act, we really are in a tight spot where people are missing out on opportunities. So there's some steps that we're going to take to get them to come out, visit our facility, go to a job site, meet some of our apprentices, meet some of our workforce, spend some time just understanding what we're going through, but not just with him, with everyone, right? And that's our job. And what I find is interesting, and Frank, I know you probably have some stuff to add, but as we go year after year, right? The Fair and Open Competition Act gets introduced every year. But here's what's important about the Fair and Open Competition Act and why it's really critical that we go and we talk about it, is that it allows us to have that conversation about our core issue. And we get to explain to new members, right? The freshmen who haven't dealt with these issues before, the discriminatory and the problematic approach and the cost increases, the inflationary policy of implementing a PLA, and the true challenges that it really causes, and the problems it puts on their agencies to actually deliver these projects, right? These are things they don't think of and they don't hear about when people are promoting project labor agreements. So for us to come in and just say, let's just use fair and open competition in federal contracting, they're like, yeah, well, why don't we do that? It's a simple message. And I will say this year for me was so much more critical going when we did, because the guidance got issued from the administration saying, hey, we need to implement this $35 million PLA executive order. And then literally within a week and a half, 2 weeks, we're there meeting with members of Congress
Yep.
saying this is a problem. So much to the point that there was two members of Congress that our members overheard talking on the side who ABC had been meeting with throughout the day and later in the day, and they got together and we overheard them speaking. And one of them said to the other one, "Hey, we got to go talk to Trump. He needs to do something about this PLA mandate because it's, this isn't one of our values, but most importantly, like this is hurting us being able to deliver projects in California." And both of these individuals happen to be from Northern California, a more rural area. And what was interesting is that they're like, it's hard. We don't have enough contractors up here. We need to be able to have access to just getting contractors.
Right.
They're going to be bringing people in from LA and the Bay Area to work on jobs here in Northern California if we can't get this mandate getting rid of. And, they need it for their own constituents as well. So to me, it was incredibly impactful. It was timing wise, couldn't have been better. And to spread that Fair and Open Competition Act message, and then to have them go and be our vocal mouthpieces and be able to do it on their own and talk about it after the fact, tells you we did a good job. Tells you why it's important we go every year. Sorry, Frank, I know you've got stuff to add, but I hope I thought it was just an incredibly different year.
You guys are doing, I mean, it's again, both you and Mike are bringing up some great points. I mean, like I said, it's this every year. I mean, and I was very impressed, Mike, with Congressman Whiteside. Here, somebody who has obviously been on the government contracting side, right? Trying to negotiate and get things done through the government. For him to kind of open his eyes about project labor agreements and those kind of things. And for him to, and I forgot what he said, but it was like, he was shocked to hear about this information and how that we need to do a better job of communicating that with these freshmen, that they understand that, the impact that some of this stuff has on not just, the community itself, but on the administration itself is trying to get these jobs done under a budget, because they don't realize that every time they put a project labor agreement in, it adds more to the total value of the contract.
Yep.
So, Frank, being the veteran, you've gone many times. I mean, so much to the point that you've testified before a congressional hearing. You're recognized by the members of Congress when you come in and they say, "Hey, Frank, you're back." It's
scary. That is truly scary, right?
Yeah.
But I did get 2 congressional hugs this time. That's like I get every year. So everybody be jealous.
We are. So what would you say to a member that maybe hasn't participated in the Government Affairs Committee, Frank, or hasn't had a chance to participate in any of the national events where you get to engage and start to work on these policy related issues? What would you say to them as a reason why they might want to get involved?
Well, I'm going to say something that's been told to me for the past 30-something years. Either get into politics or get out of business. Because if you're not involved, you're not making an impact. All you can do is sit on your couch with a remote control saying, "I can't believe what our local politicians did to me," right? If you're not upfront, if you're not talking to these either local or any members of any government entity, right, or all the way up to the top, like I said, we get to talk to Congress, right? But if you're not sending the message up the hill, or sending the message to Sacramento, or sending the message to downtown Anaheim, here where I'm at, right? You're not going to make an impact. Don't expect change if you're not going to ask for change.
Very true. And then, Mike, for you, still being, you've been on the Government Affairs Committee, I think about 1.5 years now, and this being your first legislative conference, what would you say to other ABC members, member contractors, member associates, and suppliers? What would you say about getting involved with ABC either through the Government Affairs Committee or attending one of these legislative events?
I mean, same that Frank just said it perfectly. And I love that quote you just said, Frank. But yeah, I mean, you're either in the fighting, or in the trenches, or you can let other people do it. But I mean, again, it's you don't have much of a say once your fate gets dealt to you. So at least you're in the battle fighting. So I think it's definitely get involved. I mean, just to throw a plug your way, Russell, I've learned so much from you in the last year, and to see you in, ABC SoCal is very lucky to have you, extremely lucky to have you. Be the mouthpiece for this, because you just bring so much value. You know how to deal with these congressional meetings. So you do a great job. So thank you so much I just wanted to throw that in. Thank you so much for what you do for ABC.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And
that is a great point, Mike. I mean, Russell's been involved with our chapter for quite a while, and we've seen such a big difference in the message that's being portrayed to our elected officials. The narrative has changed bringing Russell on board, because we used to be known as no's. Now we're yeses and maybes.
It's awesome. Well, and I will say this, because I really view it as kind of like a two-way street, right? Like I appreciate the praise. Thank you very much. But I'm fortunate that I'm able to help ABC, because it's a message of fairness. It's a message of opportunity. It's a message of America, right? Like, that's what I love about ABC. It really is Americana. It's like, hey, we just want to exist. We want to have a chance. We want to have opportunity. Let's go get it done. Yeah. And then the opportunity we provide to the workers, whether they're in the craft training or the apprenticeship training programs, it's life-changing for people. So it's an easy message to talk about, right? And when you've got something that's easy to talk about that you totally 100% believe in, it makes it easy. And so it's a two-way street. And I will say, this year more than any other year for our legislative conference, I felt was more impactful. And I felt it was more impactful with the members of Congress. And I felt it was more impactful with, hopefully with the administration. And that's because of the critical time of which we were at. And I think it's kind of critical because, the big, beautiful bill today is the day that the House is supposed to apparently vote on it, right? But while we were there, it was sucking literally all the wind out of the room.
Yeah.
And the fact that we were there saying, yeah, our association supports the big, beautiful bill, but here's our real core issue. I felt that the members were actually listening to us a little bit more than normal, because they were done with the big, beautiful bill. They're like, we're tired. This is sucking all the wind out of the room.
I go home.
We're having some really impactful and just meaningful conversations. And because there was actually an action, and with the guidance issued by the administration and the need for the Fair and Open Competition Act, right? Before, it was just a conversation. This year, we had an immediate need. This is a problem today. Let's fix this today, because this is causing a problem. Where before, it's always kind of been like, well, there's these executive orders encouraging, there's executive orders discouraging it, but there was no real immediacy. Now there's an immediacy. And there was an immediacy with when Biden implemented it, but it was different because the agencies were finding their way around it. Now with the guidance from the administration and the court ruling, we got to get rid of that executive order, or we need the Fair and Open Competition Act to pass. So that was my big takeaway. I thought this year more than any other year, it was more purposeful. And I feel like we actually had more meaningful conversations than we normally do. Not saying we don't have meaningful conversations, but this one was really, really digging it. So, well, anything else in closing you want to add, Frank or Mike, before we wrap up? And
well, I think you guys did a great point. It was great to hear Mike's views of what he saw. Like I said, coming many times, right? It seems like, we have the people on the Hill that get us, the people that don't get us, and the people that want to get us, right? So it was very encouraging to see through Mike's eyes what his thoughts were about the meetings. Like I said, because many times, you talk to some of these incumbent members of Congress that they've been hearing our message, and we refer to one of them as he's a car salesman. He tells us what we want to hear, but we know in reality is he doesn't care what we say, right? He owes his office to other entities, and he will do everything he can to support them. And the hell with is what I was talking to a gentleman yesterday about the 90% rule, the fact that we control 90% of the industry. And here these members of Congress, they don't care. They don't care that there's more of us than there are of them, right? So it's neat to see under fresh eyes. Like I said, we were talking earlier about some of the other new people that this first time going to this conference and going to talk to members. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of stories being shared over the next board meetings, that kind of stuff of what people saw. But I mean, it's like always. I mean, unfortunately, this was my last year attending, which is sad. But it was definitely probably one of the most impactful meetings I've ever been to. Just the fact, like I said, it was neat. Like I said, I was very encouraged by meeting some of the newer members of Congress and hearing what their thoughts are and stuff. So, I'm hoping that, we will see change. It might be just a little bit, but we are going to see change that's going to benefit not just us as contractors, but also our employees and our apprentices, because they're the ones that boots on the ground. They're the ones that have the most, at stake, right, for what we do and what we say, right?
Yep.
That apprentice that's sitting in class right now, he has no idea what we did this past week. But it's one of those kind of things, hopefully that the message got through, right? And we were able to, behind the scenes, impact that person's lives forever. So.
Yeah, Frank, I don't know if you're completely off the hook. I'm assuming we're going to call you back in next year, but so just stay ready. One thing, well, this is kind of random, but a thought I had was, it was really great to see, and this is also just kind of a plug for the Political Action Committee and the PAC Committee, or the Government Affairs Committee. It was really awesome because it was an election year to see what ABC does within local elections. I don't know if everyone knows, but we actually interview many, many, many candidates for local public office, mayor, councilman, all the way up to congressional and what happens in the state Senate. And what I kind of realized, Russell, and maybe, we elect these California congressional people. They go to Washington, D.C., and they kind of become a part of the Washington arm, and they work on stuff federally, and they aren't able to speak so much for our crazy state of California. So the point I'm making is, one, local elections are extremely critical and important, and we have to focus on them and keep fighting here in California. But back to car salesman, we won't throw names. It was interesting when he said, if XYZ continues to happen, another Democrat will never get elected in California. And if you could just make a quick switch, we'd go from the 4th largest economy in the world to the 3rd. And I guess I wanted to say, well, if that's how you feel, why aren't you doing more with California and Sacramento to make some adjustments? And I think we kind of said that, and his comment was, I can't really do anything in California. And that was a little deflating to me, to see that the people we send to Washington, D.C. from California can't really impact our state as much as I thought they did, I guess, naively. But that was just kind of an interesting thing. But yeah, the music. What was that?
That was a great point. I forgot about that completely. How basically, after all said and done, he says, like, yeah, I really don't have any influence over what happens in California. And I was like,
yeah,
you're an elected official in the state of California. You're voted by the people of California, and you can't help us in California.
Yeah, that's exactly, yes.
What the hell are you doing in that office, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, the car salesman. I mean, again, I'm sure the people that elected him, they all drive brand new Pintos, thinking I got a great deal.
Well, I will say this, and it's not to be defensive for that individual, to defend that individual, but a lot of times you get elected, you think you can only influence what's in front of you, right? But the reality is elected officials have a strong voice and a pulpit, and it's how they choose to use it. And the people also behind that elected official can be really impactful, because then they can run for those local seats. They can run for, when their staff start running for local office, when they start running for state office, that is where they can spread their influence, right? And if they hire people of a like mindset and a like, cut of their cloth, right, then that's how that influence gets spread. So you're right to some point to say, no, you got a little more influence than you think is not off, but they can't really influence that policy directly. So that being said, I want to thank you both, not only for your time this morning and joining us on the Merit in Motion podcast, but I want to thank Frank, you, for your years of dedication to ABC. Like Mike said, I think we're going to call you back out of retirement a couple of different times. And Mike, thanks for going and being engaged in your first time experience. I'm glad you walked away with the same amount of fire in the belly I get every time I go. And Frank, if you ever get bored and you want to join us again, standing invite. I'm sure ABC would love to have you go back with us. So with that, gentlemen, thank you very much. Thank you for volunteering. Thanks for joining the Merit in Motion podcast. And we'll see you guys at the next fight.
Thanks, Russell.
Thanks, Russell.
Thanks for listening to Merit in Motion, the official podcast of ABC Southern California. Be sure to subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google, or anywhere you get your podcasts. Tune in next time for the latest in merit shop advocacy, workforce development, and the policies shaping our industry.